Peace and blessing, Soul Fam. Adam Jackson here with another episode of the Sacred Sons podcast. My brothers, we have a very special guest today. Joining us all the way from Cairo, Egypt, is Pierre-Etienne Vannier. So stoked to drop in with my brother. He's been with Sacred Sons since 2019. And through our experience together, we have shared culture, songs, our thoughts, our beliefs, and even at some moments we've scratched upon some wisdom. So I'm excited to drop in with him today in Scotland. Yes, I said it, Scotland. I'm talking to you. Sacred Sons Prime Leadership is coming to Europe. July 13th through 17th, Sacred Sons will be in Selkirk, Scotland for our Prime Leadership experience. We are looking for 15 men who would like to lead in this work, in men's work, in masculine alchemy from all around Europe. That container is about halfway full, and we are truly looking to deepen in relationship with the brothers from Europe who have been following the Sacred Sons journey, who are taking up this banner of masculine alchemy, of inner work, of healing for ourselves and those around us. If you're interested, please go to sacredsons.com, click on Prime Leadership Europe to join that event. All right. And with that, our guest today, he will be joining us at the Prime Leadership. He will also be joining us all around Europe for our Sacred Sons immersions. He is a mind-body practitioner. He's a student of Sufi Islam. He's a husband and father of two. He has spent the past 15 plus years learning, practicing, and teaching traditional and modern mind-body methods of stress and trauma management. Please welcome Pierre-Etienne Vannier.
Peace and blessings, brothers. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you, your families, and all of us. What a pleasure to be here. It's an honor. Thank you for the invitation. It's good to see you, brother.
Good to see you as well. I love it. I love it, bro. Like I just said, you bring the culture. I love the fact that you brought some of the Sufi wisdom and just your own personal vibe into Sacred Sons. You know what I mean? We're back in 2019, we were sitting around those fires and chanting. And I just remember there was a moment where it's like, hey, is this okay to pray this way with this group? You know what I mean?
And I remember the answer. That was, and I don't know if you're talking about me asking you or you.
I'm talking about you.
Because because I was, there was and I remember you saying, bro, you don't need a disclaimer here. And I remember that moment because that was very liberating for me. I had been walking on eggshells a little bit with my own, religion, spirituality, spiritual awakening, call it whatever you want, right? It's that path, but also embodying it and walking that razor thin line, which is like, here is my ego, just my enlightened ego showing up, and here is just me actually belittling myself and not being ashamed of who I am. And that moment, brother, when you were like, you don't need disclaimer, we know you, that was like, okay, let's bring it on. And these moments that came afterwards, man, will stay with me forever, because when I've seen the brothers opening their heart and saying, yeah, just let me see and let me experience how you connect,
yes,
to the divine. To me, that it's just as I'm talking about it, there's like, I've goosebumps because I remember the brothers saying, we want to know. And then when we started to chant, and like morning prayers in the mountain, like sunrise, and a bunch of brothers from all over the place,
yes,
calling divine names, resonating in the mountain, like.
Yeah, I love that. I love that particular moment. I would say that was the beginning of the pillar of prayer for us.
Yeah,
what we called in, and it's important because we are not our parents' generation. We have the ability to really see each other and to really invite in, not only what they call out there diversity of appearance or thought or belief, but to invite in the authentic expression of prayer in whatever way that comes in, whatever language, whatever song, like it is welcome. And Sacred Sons is here to invite that in, truly. And I'm a proponent for more spaces on earth where culturally we can come together in celebration.
Amen. You know, one of the most powerful moments also that I remember forever is that moment when I was just doing some my morning rituals and morning prayers, and a brother came to sit by and started his morning prayers, and another brother started his morning prayers, and at some point, I don't know, maybe like 30 minutes into each other doing our own things and prayers, and there started to be like a resonance, and I know I started to hum and I started to chant what I was chanting, but a little louder, because I was thinking, if I was alone, would I do it alone? Yeah, I would have wanted a little alone. With the other brothers mind? No, I'm sure they won't mind, because they're already starting to get a little louder. And then we started to just, between a brother was going like, oh, 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 and another brother was starting to chant in Spanish. And oh, these sacred moments of like, you know, everything comes in alignment. And there was that share moment that every brother here brought his own sacredness without saying my path is the path, without saying I have the truth, just saying here is one path. And in that moment, all these timelines kind of like, you know, came together, and it was like, the form doesn't matter, because at the end it was all pure love, you know, of like, let me express it. And I express it like this, you express it like that. We're all expressing the same thing. Divine love, brother, for, you know, love. And like, for everything that's around us. Like, thank you for like the prayers is how I connect to myself, how I connect to my kids, to my partner, to my partners, to, you know, these are prayers too.
Oh, yes. Wow. Yes. Truly the intersection of truth in a moment equals love. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a truth that it doesn't have to be the truth of all eternity. It's the truth of the moment that we're in together. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I remember you you came up to me and you were like, brother, like, do you know what you're doing? Like this, like when you're who, ha, you know, we're just doing this at the end of a brother's process. And you're like, these are ancient ways. And what my reflection to you was, well, this is just what I feel. You know, it's like in this moment. And yes, there maybe thousands of years ago, there were other men and other women and other children who also felt that truth expressed through their bodies, because we have the same bodies that they did. We can make the same sounds. We can go back and we can tap in to the truth of the essence of what it means to be a human being. And we can do that together, regardless of our belief systems.
And they live within us, where we're just continuing the work. Isn't that, I mean, when you think about it, right? When you think about, even from the standpoint of like epigenetics or intergenerational, and we talk about intergenerational trauma all the time, but there's also that intergenerational, transgenerational resilience, all these packages of wisdom and knowledge that is like, yeah, I know that, right? And just like you going into like ways to connect and to close certain processes and to bring like a way to say, all right, now you can be at peace. And that these sounds coming for me is also, that's like, you know, collective consciousness that's kind of coming through you in that moment. Or at least that's mostly what I feel happens in these moments. You know?
All right, so you can already see where we're going. We're going to drop into all things. I'm really interested about the work that you're doing, you know, integrating and healing our inner wounds. I'm interested in bringing this work to Europe. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But before we do, let's take a deep breath for ourselves. Scanning the body, feeling what is alive and present. My brother Etienne, on this beautiful day in Cairo, actually evening in Cairo, yeah?
The sun is setting. The minarets are going to come for prayer very soon. What a coincidence, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. As the sun sets, what is most alive within you?
Well, this is, you know, the sun setting in Cairo is always a special moment. It's a moment of prayer. It's that's actually when things start, when really there's a transition, and I'm feeling that transition both in that moment and in my life. You know, when we met, I was living in the US, and now as we're catching up, you know, I'm back in Cairo, and so Cairo is bringing to me in this very moment that sense of like this. There's so much going on. There's so much hecticness, and you will probably catch some of that through my mic today. And yet, there's also like a deep sense of peace, a deep sense of like, I'm okay. You know, you're okay. All these stories, all that. So there's that, and there's also a deep sense of joy. Like I have very fond memories of our many conversations around the fire. So I'm looking forward to this one.
Beautiful. Thank you, Adam Jackson, checking in. Today, just returning from Austin, Texas, we had an incredible week of recording music and songs and prayers. So just like those fires that we've been sitting around for years, now we took the opportunity to go in and record some of them and to have them to share and to broadcast in an even more potent and profound way. You know, there's a lot of brothers out there who can't make it to our circles, who don't sit around the fire, but how can we share our prayers with them? And so I'm really checking in with like the power of music, because ever since I've left, I haven't stopped listening to these songs that we've recorded. They have they're in my bones. It's in my blood. I wake up and I'm like, oh, I want to listen to this again. So I'm like, I'm overflowing with music running through me. And I'm, you know, as a person, I played in a band for 10 years. I don't know if you know that about me, but, you know, music has been a massive part of my life, of my experience and evolution as a human. And so to be at this stage in my life, again, recording and getting into a position to share music with the world, I'm just like so lit up with it. And truly, you know, I really feel that songs specifically are the best way to share our ideas, our passions, and like I said, our prayers. So with that, I'm in, and we'll be sharing some songs together as we come to Europe. So before we get to all of the goodness that's coming, you know, I also know that you've lived through a few revolutions in your life. You know, you've been in places where there has been a lot of conflict and inner turmoil. And so before we go in the inward, could you just tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey up to this point?
You know, the word that comes up here is shape-shifting. You know, like when I had an opportunity recently to kind of like redo my website, which is an opportunity to kind of like once again reflect on my own evolution. You were talking about your relationship to music and things that kind of keep on coming back in your life. Yeah. And also how things can become so very different. So for me, it started, you know, I've had quite a few lives, whether I was leading people on the slopes of the Kilimanjaro early on, or in safaris, and then found myself like in chambers of commerce in South America, and then found myself in there having a bunch of like crazy experiences, whether it's finding myself stuck on a glacier, you know, or at night in the middle of a storm, or finding myself in the midst of a landslide in Ecuador, and like life was basically just going like just, you know, what is really important for you right now, and then moving on and finding myself like interviewing presidents and ministers in Eastern Europe and North Africa, and ending up at the UN and working at the UN, traveling all across the Arab world, and then eventually moving more and more towards healing and working with people, which is what I've been doing, you know, for 15 years. And that healing is really, I feel like, and all of us are or at least most of the, like you and the people in my circles, that people were really seeking ways to connect to myself. And for me, it was just what I was looking for was being offered to me divinely as saying, okay, why don't you work with people as a hypnotherapist, and then studying more nervous system regulation, which is truly my expertise and what to me has been an amazing discovery of the nervous system, which led me to also explore breath work and movements and different ways to regulate the nervous system. And then starting to see ritual practices, sacred practices from different traditions also as healing practices. And it's like, oh no, wait, like if I'm doing chanting, we're talking about singing, music,
yes.
chanting, which is, wow, like how important and what happens to my body, to my cells in that moment of vibration, And so
let's talk about that. Let's talk about that really quickly while we're here. What is that? What is that that's happening? Like, I'm expressing it's coming to me through song and music. And yes, when we're chanting together, like there is some type of activation and a deep calming, a deep peace that comes over the nervous system. So what is that technology in your experience?
Everything is vibration. I think let's just remember that everything is vibration. Let's remember that if you were to look into a cell and then go deeper into atom and then subatomic particles, and then what would you see? You're going to see electrons and the nucleus. What's in between the electron and the nucleus? There's nothing. There's space. It's just like going like this, right? So we are in constant motion. We are vibration. And so when you look at different experiences where, you've seen these experiences on the table, they put sand on the table, yes. And then they change the frequency on the table, and then it forms beautiful patterns. They've done experiences like this, similar with water, where, what are the words that are being expressed, the energy that's being expressed, and how do these water crystals form? And when love and love and God and music and I care for you and all these energies, come through the crystals, form beautifully amazing shapes. And then when I go like, I hate you and I'm angry, like you see it just distorted. So think about it at our own level. What happens when you find yourself, just like you were recently in Austin, singing like on the same vibration, there's a resonance, right? Yeah. So whether you're in a band or, I guess in a band in Austin, or if I'm in the midst of a Sufi zikr, like Sufi chanting, right? Or if I'm, a monk somewhere else, or if I'm doing gospel on Sunday morning, like this is all the same. Yeah. It's all I feel like alignment.
I feel like the ancients understood this. Our ancestors understood this. All of these practices were developed not because they had microscopes, by the way, but because they had a sense of their own bodies, and they could feel how activating, how important, how reconnecting a practice like that can be. And so we're rediscovering it now in a new way. And yes, we're talking about regulating the nervous system, and we have lots of fun things we like to attribute, from looking under that microscope. But there's just a truth in it, isn't there? Go ahead.
There's a truth. I think it's a more elevated way to approach things, whether it's healing, whether it's technology. You were talking about the importance of sound. A couple of days ago, I was at the pyramids, the pyramids of Saqqara, and you talk about the Sacred Sons coming to Europe. Let's talk about the Sacred Sons coming to Cairo. Yes. and Egypt, because a couple of days ago, I was with the daughter of the keeper, may God bless his soul, with the keeper of the pyramids of Giza, right? And so you talk about lineage here of guides in this practice of initiation, and regulation and alignment and walking that path, whatever you want to call it. And so when we found ourselves I resonated with you saying with the sound has been, that vibration, what's been staying with you. Because for me, like for the past couple of days, I can't, the humming in the pyramids, we had the chance to actually get the place just for ourselves. And so
wow.
there was nobody, and we're in the pyramids and in different chambers, all designed. These are healing technologies. And there's an official narrative that's like, these are terms, these are this. Like, are you kidding me? Have you tried to in there? Do you know how to do that? Like, and so the keepers, indigenous, were saying, no, wait, this tradition has been passed orally, for like generations and generations. And when you go there, and I know at some point it was just my wife and I, just alone in that, deep in there. And they were like, we're gonna leave you there, just do your thing.
Wow.
And so we started with like, and then after a few moments of like, I don't know what's going on here, everything starts to vibrate around you, and you're like, what is going on? So imagine if you have, many people coming there, because there's healing for me, but there's also healing for people around, right? People around the pyramids. That's you're talking about technology, but you're also talking about peace. When you have that kind of vibration that's being used proactively as a way to say, let us keep you healthy, come connect to the sound, right? Connect to that vibration and let all your cells come into alignment. And that's why also traditionally Egypt has been at peace, for thousands of, there's been things happening here and there, but like compared to so many countries, there is what we call barakah, blessing. This land is special, it's sacred. And I believe, and many people believe, that's partially because also there's these technologies that are actually keeping us, healthy. Yeah. It's like,
and I said the word revolution earlier, and there's
yeah.
also the reality that if you go to the Great Pyramid of Giza, it's heavily guarded, and they do not want you chanting, or they don't even want you looking spiritual in there. If I'm being real,
that's true.
Right?
That's true.
So why is this? By your estimation, why is this such a revolutionary thing? Why is there such a force to suppress something as simple as oming in a temple, something as simple as chanting, harmonizing our voices?
Because people were asleep or easier to be governed, aren't they? Like liberated, elevated, people were free from fear, free from oppression. Like once you've tasted that inner peace, even though, and that's obviously that's something that needs to be practiced, but when you get to that place, you don't really you're not an easy, person to control, because you're free. So I don't
control
know
or to consume their products or to be manipulated.
Consumption and just like being milked the whole time. And I'm not talking about Egypt or the EU. I'm talking about in most countries where really we've lost our ways, and we just become, we're so disconnected from how divine we are, how how we could live more in alignment with higher values, and yet we're being kept numbed out, whether it's with opioids, with TV, with Netflix, with gambling, with sports, there's just so many other ways to keep them happy.
And on this journey,
I do all of the above, and I do most of it, but still, I'm saying, at some point, coming back to something that's like, if I was to die tomorrow, really, would I want to watch more Netflix, in my life? Like, probably not. There was something else.
No, I fully agree. And I feel like there is a sentiment of us kind of outsourcing our triumph, outsourcing glory, outsourcing our peace. Like we want to watch a peaceful film so that we can feel peace, versus going inside and doing that for ourselves. And so we're talking about liberation through sound, through music, through praying. And a lot of your work is around healing those inner wounds.
Yeah.
You know, healing from within. And so that, and I'm right with you, bro. I still love to watch the UFC. You know, don't get me wrong. I enjoy sports. However, on this path of awakening, you will find there's less interest for those things once you've found peace within. It's important to be able to go back and forth, you know, and to be able to enjoy a beer and a game. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
And if that's all you got, if you're riding or dying on your team winning the championship year in, year out, and that's the life that you're choosing, there is more to life. There is more to life. And I'm just saying that for the brothers who are listening. And so let's go to the inner work. Why inner work? Why was this such a important shift in your journey?
I think it's just found me. It was just a natural evolution of what I was doing, because at the UN for years I was working with people living with HIV and AIDS programmatically in terms of leadership and process groups and things like that. And eventually I really realized that the true breakthroughs were not coming from, oh, you have the technology, you have the knowledge, or you have everything you need to know, because it's not about the knowledge, it's about the embodiment. It's about coming back home and, like you said, just facing the shadows, facing the fears, like this is the real breakthroughs that I would see initially in my work, was like when people had the opportunity to just feel what they needed to feel, just to be held. It was not complicated. It was not like rocket science. It was just like, hey, can I cry right now? Like, do I feel safe enough to cry? I do, yes, okay. And then I can release that and I can move on and I can find peace, because the premise of my work is we're designed to heal. And so the goal is really to just remember that and to believe that, because once you believe that, I've been working for almost a decade with people with HIV, for almost a decade with people dealing with cancer. I got a sense, started to get a sense of like, okay, what is that about? And what it's about, like you said, it's about that connecting to these inner wounds, recognizing the inner wounds, but most importantly, before going there, learning how to reclaim safety within myself. Why most of us do not go inside? Not because we're lazy, not because we don't want to, and potentially we may even know that, I really need to deal with that emotional baggage here, so I'm less of an asshole to my wife, to my parents, to my sister, whatever, because sometimes I really, I'm not in alignment with my higher self. Why? Because this emotional trauma and all these baggage is just pulling me down. And why don't we go there? Oftentimes it's because we don't feel safe enough.
Yeah. Because
feeling emotion has been pathologized in today's society. Like, what's the first response that most people do? Like, if somebody cries, like, it's going to be okay, just stop crying.
You want to put a hand on them and suppress it.
Just, you want to drink, you want to smoke, let's do something so we can repress that shit. And I'm French. I'm, like national sport in France is like emotional repression. So I know what I'm talking about. And yet really, when you give yourself permission to connect to that, that's what you've been doing for a few years right now with the brothers, right? It's like,
totally.
Then it's that moment of freedom and liberation, which is like, I've been working with people who sometimes on their deathbed, they've been dragging stuff from the past, like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And it's why? Because there was no moment in their life where it was safe enough for them to feel, because every time they would feel, they would feel overwhelmed. And so when we talk about regulation here, we're talking about how can I learn to process all of that, whether it's my dad, like my dad yelling at me, whether it's like chronic illness in my family, some deaths, like whatever happens to me, whatever happened to you in your past, the question is like, how can I come to peace with that? Right? How can I learn how to hold it? not in a cathartic way necessarily. You know, it's not about just like, oh, I'm going to feel it and then I'm done. Bro, it's a practice. Yeah. You know, it can paradoxically both happen in the moment and also take a long time, because there's a lot to learn from it. And as long as I haven't learned what I need to learn from that wound and grow and grew from it, guess what? That's just going to keep on coming back.
Not only is it going to keep coming back, it's got the potential to kill us. You know, a lot of these illnesses and sicknesses are like you're saying, sort of emotional things that people are just weighed down by because of fear to confront it, because of fear to have a conversation that they know they need to have, a fear of a truth that they need to express, which could lighten the load.
But who said these illnesses and diseases and traumas and challenges, and, you know, who said that's actually, I mean, I've heard so many times people telling me, you know what, HIV is the best thing that ever happened to me. You know what, wow. Cancer is the best thing that ever happened to me. You know what, when this happened, you know, it made me the person I am. And let's be careful here. You know, I'm saying that very respectfully and compassionately, because yes, you know, when you know, there's some, you know, people losing children and stuff, like, who's the asshole who's going to be like, oh yeah, let's look at the bright side, you know? No, fuck that. Just feel your pain, brother. Here, there's some things that we don't understand. But one of my specialties also, not just trauma recovery, but promoting post-traumatic growth, which is really, everybody's talking about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and like we've become so experts at our issues and problems and labels, and, you know, and everything needs to be labeled, and that pisses me off, because I see teenagers and generations growing up on you know, medicated and numbed out. And so anyway, that's maybe a conversation for another time. But yeah, here what I'm saying is that I've done some work in, you know, in collaboration with some big hospital in Huntington, in LA, in California. We've done some research on promoting post-traumatic growth using mind-body practices. What does that say in some more simple terms, which is like, how can I grow from my life challenges, not go back to where I was, because that me is gone, yeah, but rise to a higher level of functioning. Let me repeat that. These traumas, these challenges, opportunities to rise to a higher level of functioning, to become somebody who's, you know, fuller, freer, more healed, because nobody ever said, oh, everything is going great right now, I'm going to challenge myself and grow. You know, that growth usually comes from adversity. Yeah. And so whether we want it or not, there's gifts in this moment of like, oh shit, that hurts. Whatever happened in your life, this is an opportunity to say, okay, how can I now treat myself more respectfully, more lovingly? You know how many people tell me that? They're like, you know, since I had this thing happen to me, I felt like I'm more loving towards myself. I'm more patient towards myself. I'm more compassionate. I'm more grateful. Because once you've seen death close by and you're like, you know what? I'm not sure I'll be here in 6 months. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to, you know, kiss my daughter goodnight. You know, I've had home visits, and I'll just finish my thought on that. A few years ago, I did a home visit of a brother who had cancer, brain cancer, and when I don't do that many house calls, but for whatever reason, I was like, you know what? His wife called me. I was like, it's okay, I'll come. And when I entered in his house, I remember after having a conversation with his wife, then she left me to see and check on him, and I started to look around, and this house looked like my house. The pictures on the wall looked like the pictures on my wall in my house. That, you know, his daughter looked like my daughter. That could have been me in that bed. Yeah. And I remember that moment when I came out, and I still remember him. I still remember his face, his name. I still remember so many things, because in that moment I came home, and I bet you know, that I didn't rush to my computer, to my TV, to Netflix. What did I do? I went and sat with my kids. You know, and I'm still feeling a little emotional here, because I'm like, because we take that shit for granted, or let me own it. Sometimes I take that shit for granted, you know? And when you realize that, you know what, tomorrow you could be gone, brother, I could be gone. And so I'm that gift of like what that trauma is giving us is like, okay, how, if, since time is limited, let's remember that.
Yeah.
What is it? What is my purpose? What is my path? If I was to die tomorrow, next month, or in 6 months, which is some exercises sometimes we do with people for who, it is a real possibility, knowing it's a possibility for every single person. What would I want to do?
Yeah. And the important piece here is
yeah.
that we don't have to wait until we're on our deathbed to decide to live. We don't have to wait until the divorce to start showing up for our partners and our families, our children. We don't have to wait, until it's too late. And that's, I feel like a lot of the modern comforts of culture are just saying, yeah, drink it, smoke it, dope it away, whatever it is, whatever your particular modality is, but you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait, and it's like there is there's kind of a sense in this world that we're all just kind of waiting for the next tragedy.
I mean, you don't have to wait, and yet statistically you probably will. Let's be honest here. It's unlikely. The reasons why I showed up with you guys is because why? Not because I was like, oh, I don't know about this. Everything is going great. I'm going to go try something new. No, it's because my wife and I were like, shall we get a divorce?
Right.
It was straight up like, oh shit, need to get,
Can I ask you about that? Because I get so many questions, like, well, how did people bring this work home? And I see what you're doing, but it looks like you're just having a lot of fun out there, which we do. We do have a lot of fun.
We do.
And that's important. It's an important aspect of life. However, on the real, some of the deep work we do, some of the emotional processing we do has real impact in the lives of the men who join us. Could you share a little bit about yours?
How long you got, brother? Because I mean, this is, I need to start an answer with a deep sense of gratitude to you and every brother who's been in these circles, holding space. Whether I was in the middle of this circle processing my stuff, or witnessing another brother going through a process that is deeply relevant to me and doing the work for me. Yes. Partly, allowing me also to heal. Where to start? Maybe with the fact that for me this has profoundly changed my life, and I've been on that path for a long time, of healing, of exploring practices and modern technologies and traditional ways and spirituality and this and that. But there was a piece missing, and the fact, and being only among brothers here, among men, created a space that I think is special, that has been lost. Yeah. And again, some guys are like, well, but why you want to segregate and stuff? And I'm like, because there's a purpose for it. There's a reason for it. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just come and show up and just check it out and see and you'll understand. Because in that moment, for me, I was able to do some work, and I'm still able, this is an ongoing practice, to do the work that should not be done with my wife at home.
Right.
Like, she's not my mom. She's not, like, let's fucking grow up, brothers, and stop putting the burden, our emotional burden and trauma and mommy issues and daddy issues onto our wives, partners, husbands. Let's just grow the fuck up. And for me, that's what needed to happen. Because at some point my wife was like, yeah, I know you're doing work, but there's still a bunch of like things here that make you sometimes respond to me not as a 40-something year old man, but as like I hear the 15-year-old teenager. I hear like the 8-year-old boy who was afraid, the teenager was a rebel with like, and I was like, yeah, I think you're right. That's true. I'm aware of that, but I don't know how to process that. And so to be in a space where you're like, okay, I'm here to heal and to process and find peace with that 15-year-old teenager, with that 6-year-old who's afraid, some of the process I've processed for me was moments, traumatic events in my life that kind of froze me in time, that froze part of me in time, if you were to understand how trauma works. And that blocked my ability, and it kind of like, it stayed with me forever, because it was like, I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
You know, that 6-year-old who got really scared once, you know, was like, I'm not going anywhere and I'm going to stay scared. And maybe if somebody starts to yell or there's a confrontation of something, I'll make sure to come back and to remind you that this is a scary moment, you know. And so for me to be in a space where it's okay to retrieve, reconnect with inner wounds going within myself and saying, okay, can I hold myself? Can I hold this little one? Can I hold whatever emotion, sensation, you know, that I need, so that then my body can do what it needs to do. It's going to shake, it's going to take a sigh, it's going to yell, it's going to push. Something's going to happen, man. That energy is going to be, that vibration that, you know, is going to change. You will most likely find yourself buzzing a little bit. Why? It's because, again, your body's saying, shh, all right, now let's rise. Yes. You know, just like that Kundalini. It's all across traditions. That moment where it's like, okay, you know, here I am. And there's that moment of liberation is that person that can then come home. Is that husband that can come home and say, oh, you know what? And I speak only for myself, that man we used to yell at my, you know, 6-year-old, you know, and repeating that fucked up pattern, you know, that I had seen, that I witnessed as a child, is not happening anymore. Why? Because I was able to see it. I was able to process it. I was able to just work on it. And I have brothers who are holding me accountable, and I'm holding myself accountable for that. But that's how you bring it home, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to hone in on a specific piece here, because you are a man, and because you are multicultural, you've lived all around the world. There's another sense of like what we do being a California thing. Right. Or being an American thing, or like, right. Well, look at these guys. And so what I want to ask you, because of your cultural experience, is it possible that this work can come to Europe, even with the European conditioning? And you're French, right? So like, knowing what you know about French men, is this applicable to French men, or is this something to be left in the California desert?
So in the past few weeks, I've held circles in Egypt.
Wow.
I've held circles in France. I've held circles with brothers online on the Brothership, right? Yeah. From all of the place. I think we had about 10 nationalities a couple of days ago in the class, which is, you know, it's always an amazing experience that's special. What we do is beyond words. It's beyond language. It's about coming back to the body. So whether I found myself, you know, in these past few weeks, there's been similar experiences every time, whether it's a brother called Mahmoud coming from a town that's about 2 hours away from Cairo, and was showing up in a men's circle, which is
intimidating.
Quite surprising, you know, quite surprising for him to be here, and for us to find ourselves in the circle on the rooftop of Cairo. And at some point there was some like impromptu, let's go a little deeper here, because you know what, the energy is becoming powerful. And I looked at him, and all the brothers were holding him like this and saying, what do you want, Mahmoud? And he said in Arabic, Ana aiz hub, I want love. He looked at me, he started to cry, and he was like, I want love. And you know where it goes often from there. I was like, what? I was like, I want love. I was like, what? I want love. What? I want love. And then we all started, you know, yelling on the rooftops of Cairo, you know.
How do you say it in Arabic?
Aiz hub. Hub is love.
Aiz hub.
Aiz hub. Hub is love. And so in that moment, we found ourselves yelling with a bunch of Egyptian brothers, you know, I want love. A few weeks later, I was on a river next to a waterfall in the French Alps with a brother called, you know, Pierre, who in the moment, same, just when we were like, if somebody's ready to process and you feel like something needs to be witnessed and released, you know, step forward.
Yeah.
He stepped forward. We didn't speak for 5 minutes. So it's not about the language. And in these 5 minutes, so much has happened. He cried, he laughed, he raged, he found peace, he smiled. And we didn't, you know, hardly a word here and there to really say, hey, we here, just hold it. And so to answer your question, apologies for the long answer. This is universal, brothers. This is the language of a body. This is coming back to the humanity here of like, regardless of where I come from and which language I speak and what language I'm doing this process of. And yes, it's usually beneficial, you know, to process your stuff. If you need the language, to process it in your own language, which is why I know in my circles, I'm always like, hey, when shit gets real, you know, just switch to whatever language you're more comfortable. Because again, there's a connection here, right? We can go deeper. But for me, yeah, I'll end this answer with like, it's beyond words. And I've seen that in many places, in many countries. Frenchmen are ready for it. I didn't think they were. The past few weeks have made me change my mind.
Probably in 2019, when you first joined us, you were like, oh, these French guys are never going to understand what I'm doing. Yet here we are. The entire planet has just been through a collective traumatic experience.
Profound shift,
we have
man.
been through a collective imposed isolation, and so now we're coming out of that, and the need for this work, the need for the work that is not about words but is about frequency, is about love. And truly what the piece that I love you said the most is like, come back to your humanity, regardless of what you've been told or what you believe about yourself. Come back to your humanity and do that around others. Do that with others who are coming in truly like with our frequencies in alignment. And when that happens, what is created is harmony to heal, harmony to find peace, harmony to find love, to reconnect.
And I think perspective, I think for those of us who I think have healed or have understood the message or the opportunity, right, that is being offered to us in the past couple of years, I think some people may see oppression, some people may see freedom, you know, in what's been happening. And the way I see it, when you talk about isolation, the word that comes to mind for me is seclusion.
That's a better
seclusion,
word. Yes.
Because seclusion is also here. Let's take a step back. I mean, if you think that nothing happens, everything happens for a reason, then as far as I'm concerned, for me, this is a spiritual seclusion, which my teachers and you know, initiates would go through. It's like, find yourself isolated right now with you, your thoughts, your fears, your hopes, everything, and let's just feel it. And I think many of us, you know, have found ourselves providing that, you know, there was not so much numbing, which I think also happened for a lot of people, unfortunately. But I think for people were like, okay, let me stop numbing out and let me spend some time with me, myself, this moment. What a profound opportunity to say, oh, wow. How many people, and I don't mean to sound controversial here, you know, how many people have told me, you know, COVID, dude, awesome, changed my life.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm saying it with a lot of respect and, you know, for people who've lost people, and I think we've all lost people. And if we're not lost people, we've lost many other things potentially. And yet in that loss, understand this transformation too. If you've lost your job, isn't it why maybe you should let go of that shitty job that you've been wanting to let go of for like years, and here is your opportunity. Yeah. How many brothers have gone independent? I know many. Just in the past last year we said fuck corporate, you know what, I'm going to do my thing. And I'm like, yeah, this is how we, this is
time.
elevation.
This is the time.
It's right now. It's right now.
Wow. It's right now. And we're coming. We're coming to Europe. Like I said in the beginning, we're coming to Scotland in July, and we're not stopping there. You know, we're going to Ireland, Amsterdam, Paris, Portugal, Budapest, Hungary. Powerful, man. It's, I mean, just from my perspective, to have this work, to have leadership in Europe currently, you know, such as yourself, and there are others emerging. This is there's just so much power and conscious. I want to say it like this: like we're as an American, we're returning to Europe, bringing back the gold of what we've discovered here. Because imagine some of the folks who came over and what they were carrying and the baggage and all the shit they brought over here. And now 400, 500 years later, we're in a process of transmuting it still. And so we found a couple things. We've sang a couple songs. We've held space. And now we're returning to Europe and bringing this to the brothers who are there and, you know, who are going through it in their own ways. What does it feel like for you to return to your homeland in Paris and bring this work?
Well, it feels, you know, for the past couple of years, I've had this call. I mean, I haven't been working. I've spent most of my life outside of France by now, abroad, and you know, and so it changes. You know, it changed my relationship with my country, with my people, and at the same time, interestingly, there's been an increased interest of mine to just reconnect, to just go back. And it started with like men's circles in French, and then eventually held some events there and like had some retreats, and then realizing that, oh wow, you know what, the brothers we came up to the last retreat we did was just phenomenal. It was just the power of that group, of that people, and of that land. And that's also for me to acknowledge that coming back to, that's an old land.
Yes.
And if I was talking about even my people, I'm the first in many generations to kind of like move, you know, away like this. And when I was looking at my family tree, that was shared to me by my grandmother that we've talked about before. May she rest in peace. She showed me that tree, and that was going back even before the French Revolution. You know, there's a people of the land. We've been in that land for like hundreds of years. And so it's interesting for me to go back there and to do this work on that land, because it's not just doing it anywhere. It's doing it in that land, in connection with nature, in connecting with the people. And so I feel excited, because I hear brothers in France, but frankly speaking, I feel like here, everywhere, brothers are hungry.
Everywhere.
They're looking, and they're women too. The women are hungry for them to do the work. And I speak of them, I speak of myself, obviously. How many, you know, I'm assuming that happens to you. But every time I'm like, doing man's work, this is great. I need to send my man, you know, because I love him, but it's time, you know, it's time to do the work. It's time to grow up. I'm tired of his bullshit, and I love him, and I want our relationship to grow, and I want to grow, and I want him to grow, but I'm not going to do the work for him, right? That's what I'm hearing from 98% of the women that I talk to when we talk about their husband. So it's a call to them here. And I'm assuming the people, the men, the people who are listening to us are probably familiar with the work. And if you haven't showed up already in an event, now is the time, you know, just don't wait. But that's the idea, right?
How would you invite your brothers in French, or, you know, if you want to, if you were to speak to them in your mother tongue, what would you say to them?
I would say, mes frères, rejoignez-nous. Rejoignez-nous. Ça, c'est l'appel au cœur, retour au cœur, retour au corps, retour à l'amour fraternel, à l'amour de vous. C'est vraiment, il est temps. It's time. Il est temps. Et c'est maintenant. It's now.
Il est
And that's for you.
Il est temps. It's time. One of my favorite things about hanging out with you is I always come away with new words. Bishmela being one of them. You know, I just yeah. And how about in Arabic? Let's go. Let's just throw it out in Arabic while we're here.
يا اخوانا تعالوا معنا هنشتغل من الشغل بالحب عشان كله موضوع الشغل الحب ونكونكت على الجسم وعلى على الحب جوانا يلا بينا let's go يلا بينا
I love it. You're a powerful dude, man. I love how, you know, you speak many languages and you just come with a full heart, and I've really experienced that in connecting with you. You know, we did share a time around you know, our grandmothers were kind of going through transition at a similar time, and that was very special. Nice. That's another piece of this is, yes, it's about what we call the work, but truly just the heart connection that I feel to you, and in the moments that are few and far between that we've shared. It's an honor to know you and to be on this path with you. And so I'm honored that you are really carrying this banner and being one of our leaders, not only in Europe, but in Africa, Cairo, and there's more to come.
And well, you know, the pleasure and the honor is mine. And there's something you told me once, you know, again, around the fire, I think that's talking about bringing it home, but also finding a home. Because I was telling you how sometimes I feel a little weird with my practices, with, you know, stuff. And then I realized that most of the guys who show up at the events are all, they have their own thing going on.
Yeah. They
have their own thing going on. And most likely they're going to be like a little bit like the black sheep somewhere in their family, because, you know, they may have, that was my case, you know, I had to go against the tribe somehow, you know, to free myself and to say, I love you guys, but I need to fly here. I need to, you know, I'm hungry for more. And I remember you saying, you know, it's just, it's really building a home for all these sacred sons. And in that moment, you know, it hit me, because I was like, that's right. It's like being in that moment with men where there's zero judgment. There's like, there's an open heart, there's zero judgment, and there's an opportunity to be vulnerable in a way that feels safe. And I think these spaces have become too rare. You know, today it's all about a beautifully curated feed and like filtered pictures, and your life needs to look freaking amazing on, you know, in every single moment and every single snapshot and stuff. And yet, you know how healing that can be when you show up and you're like, you know, my grandma, you know, she's in the hospital, and right now, you know, that feels heavy. And I remember you being here for me in that moment. And in that moment, it was like, you know, I think, you know, we grew a little closer, because there was no agenda. There was no like, okay, what do I need to respond? What do I need to answer? What's my counterpoint? Fuck that shit. It's just, there was a full presence, you know, here, which I think is the gift, is to practice that, being fully present, fully vulnerable between us, between men, and then eventually bringing that home. And being able to do the same thing with, you know, I'd like to think, and I'd like to think my kids and my wife would agree, that I'm a better father since, you know, I really started to say, let me look into that. I owe it to myself, I owe it to my kids to not repeat these patterns, you know, because there may be a history of domestic violence, chronic illness, and fights, and this and that. That shit stops now. because my kids deserve, better than that. And so it's up to me to do the work. So that sense of responsibility of being like, I'm going to do that work, reclaim that sense of safety, process my stuff, go home and be like a sacred husband, a sacred father, somebody who see the sacredness of these moments here. So thank you again for the gift,
You're welcome. You're always welcome where I am, brother. You know me. And all of you is welcome. That, we say that, we mean that. All of you is welcome. So with that, brothers, come home. You can always come home. That's what we're building here. And so I just want to say again, this is the time. There's never been a better time. We now have more structure to support this movement than ever. And so if you're interested, please go to sacredsons.com, find an event near you. We're coming. There's regions all around the United States, all throughout Europe. 2023, I'm looking at Africa. End of this year. We need to get back on this Cairo trip, which
let's talk.
We will. And where can our brothers and sisters find you if they feel called to work with you?
So before I mention that, would you like me to mention the dates and the destinations and the days for Europe? So
this is the time.
So when it comes, so again, yes, plenty of other opportunities here. In addition, obviously, to online gatherings, which in itself is still pretty powerful. Obviously, connecting, in the flesh is something special. And so this summer, a European summer tour, Sacred Sons, Ireland immersion on the 2nd and the 3rd of July. Join us in Paris on July 9th and 10th. Amsterdam, July 24th and 23rd and 24th. Milan on July 30th and 31st. And Portugal on August 11th and 14th, right? These are just the immersions. You've mentioned the leadership, the prime going on in between before Paris. But yeah, that's join us.
Yes, and that Portugal event, that's going to be a EMX Portugal, August 11th through 14th. So that's going to be like that's going to be the bookend of this tour. This wouldn't be happening without you, honestly, truly. And so thank you for your proximity and moving your family back to Cairo and everything that had to happen because now here we are and we're coming. And just between us, it was written. There it is. Leave it like that. Where can our brothers and sisters find you?
So they can check me out on IG at PE Vannier. So PE stands for Pierre-Etienne, my initials, Vannier, VANNIER. Again, at PE VANN, like Nancy, IER. They can also find me through the Healing Studio online, where I'm offering community classes. And every other week on the Brothership, right, for the deep dive, for some deep connection here. And again, there is some events, there's some retreats coming up in France, in Egypt, some initiation in the temples. Just there's so much to do. The time is now.
The time is now. Let's sing some songs together. Let's play some music. Let's chant. Let's pray. Bring it back to what's important. Come back to your humanity. And with that, Pierre-Etienne Vannier, Adam Jackson, Sacred Sons. We're out, family. Peace.
Peace. Salam.